This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team MARTEK Hour, Joe MARTEK.
Yes, it is. And hey, our station owner's husband just gave me a finger, which means start, right? Are you listening here? Are you not paying attention?
Would you flap your gums?
You know, remember back, Alan, when we used to have this nice, good-looking producer that was sweet and knowledgeable and... Me? Whoa, and it wasn't Cliff. The only reason I had to give reference to Cliff, he's in the corner over here, but he doesn't have his microphone in front of him.
He does the TV stuff.
I know he does the TV stuff, you know, but he's just sitting here, keeps napping and looking and saying, when are you going to do something intelligent, you know, but he's roaming around looking for a reason to look intelligent.
Your folks in California, after listening to the CDs, are asking the same question.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
They've been doing that for 15 years.
It was so funny, you know, I used to get every once in a while feedback from compliance officer in California. MARTEK, he said, you know, you're making me listen to this whole thing. It's the stupidest show I've ever heard. When are you didn't even talk for 1 second about securities. Only thing was the opener and the closing. And I said, well, I'm staying legal. You know, that's proper. Just so you folks don't know or do know, those that have listened to these shows, we've been doing them since 2004. And it was Joe MARTEK, me, financial advisor, Greg Fasula, attorney, and Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, who started doing these shows back in '04. And no clue we would still be doing them. But after that, we added Miss Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, and Mr. Mike Paulus, mortgage broker. And then we have a special guest member, Alan Love, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin. And the concept of the show originally, and still mostly, is to educate people about things that each one of us has a different area of expertise in. As an example, Dan's only, I think, 40 years as an independent insurance agent here, which that's kind of a milestone in life, or a millstone, one or the other. And in my not too humble opinion, he is the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast, because 40 years, over 100 companies in his book. Hey, if one company falls out of favor, then another one can pick up. And in fact, I think it was just last week, Alan helped me, but I think it was Pastor Jonathan who, one of the big name carriers, dropped him, non-renewed him because of...
That's right.
Because he was accident prone. And I'm paraphrasing. That isn't what they said. But
you know, things like that happen in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if the insurance company basically doesn't want you, all they have to do is send you notice saying
goodbye.
that you're canceled as of.
Yeah. And what happened is...
And, of course, they don't like you much when you're over 70.
Well, you know, listen.
You pay more.
You know what? Hey, first of all, they don't like red Mustangs with old guys, either one.
Well, that's a whole different story.
A whole different story.
Now, how in the world did you, of all people, get a red car?
Well,
that just says ticket me on the
First of all, you have to understand this. I went to see an old lady client of mine. Now, she's older than me, so I can say that. And I said, I got a male mental pause car. She goes, what red convertible did you get? And I mean, she guessed it right to the heart. And then after she said that, I said, okay, now that you're doing so well, what kind of red convertible? And she did say Mustang. I can't believe it. And I don't even know if she was sneaky and knew it ahead of time, but I was very impressed that she figured the male ego out to the nth degree. Anyway, the concept of the group, Joe MARTEK, many years as a financial advisor. I'm here to answer questions. In fact, I had prospects come in to see me in the office this morning that were all members of a church here in Port St. Lucie that I did a meeting with, and then whose pastor I'm trying to help set up a defined benefit program. And it's wonderful when people have lots of questions. And you know, Alan, things that we take for granted. Alan Love, by the way, is sitting here. Only team member that showed today, because Dan has probably got an excuse that he got roto-rooted and he's probably still hurting. You know, to me, it hurts thinking about it. I mean, right now, what are they going to do? They're going
to need to get one of those elevated desks for you.
You know, we got to buy him a whoopee cushion. Yeah, I think. But it was an interesting thing. People had 401k, didn't have a clue what it was invested in, don't work for the company anymore, but it's not making money. Well, right there, clear as a bell, the first thing was it was a CD. And point is, they don't just use easy terms. They've got to add 5 or 7 words into that to confuse people, to let them know what it was. And like she said, she had like $20,000, and so far this year it's made $20. Oh, well, that's really big money. You know, so it's not doing too well.
But how much commission is she paying?
Well, actually, when it's a 401k, it's very, very, very low. Very low. Now, there is
supposedly.
Well, yeah, what happens is nobody works for free. So you got the company that is holding the 401k. They're going to get some kind of fee. And then there's a fund, mutual fund, or whatever it is. They get a fee. So only people that work for free are politicians, of course. Oh, they get free lunches. I keep getting confused. That's it. Anyway, 340-1590, 340-1590. You got Joe MARTEK, financial advisor, and Alan Love, retired attorney, sitting here. We'd be glad to hear a couple of you. Bulldog, we're hoping you're doing good. Mike, you know, call us up, keep us alive and awake today. We haven't heard from Dan, so I'm assuming he's still alive. And the roto-rooting, he probably doesn't, like you said, he's not sitting well, but but other than that, one of the perks of not getting younger, the male prostate doesn't like old age. It's just one of the. And Alan, I know you've had a bout or two with that aggravation.
Yes, I have indeed. But a lot of good medicine now can take care of a lot of that problems. That I was fortunate I didn't need any surgery like Dan. I'm on 2 pills a day, which has cured my problem, basically.
Hasn't made you look any better.
No, but I don't care.
The magic pill, right? Americans with the magic pill.
I don't care about looks.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, because I think heart beating and breathing is much more important than looks.
Well, I got
not in Hollywood.
I got a couple.
Well, I'm not in Hollywood. I'm in.
And I've got a couple ex-wives won't agree with you.
Well, that's good.
That's good. No.
Well, you know, you went on to bigger and better things, right?
Boy, bigger women. No, wait a minute.
Score one for me.
You're not helping me. 340-1590.
We're really digging this hole deep today.
The hole is deep.
And it's only taken 15 minutes.
I brought Alan in 4 pages. Is there 4 here?
Yeah. Yes.
4 pages that I found looking on the internet the other day of stock market indexes.
Mostly U.S. indexes.
Now, 4 pages. I want you to just look at
Wait
this
a minute,
thing.
4 pages just in the U.S.?
Wait a minute. See
Mostly
all these,
in
see
the
all
US.
these indexes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, these are all basic indexes that are traded in the U.S., but a lot of them are foreign indexes too. You know, in other words, like you got Japan and Brazil, et cetera.
Yeah.
But these are all tradable indexes, and these are 4 pages of fine print. I mean, I didn't add them up. but there's probably 200 here, would you guess?
I would certainly say
Oh, easy.
150 at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I don't see that they don't have a total on here, but I was just absolutely fascinated by the fact that there were so many of them. I just didn't have a clue.
So
Anyway,
when they talk about annuities that are tied to
an index.
various indexes, it could be one of those 4 pages of indexes.
Well, the answer is yes, but no. What happens is I have never seen them use more than 2 or 3 different indexes. Normally they use the ones that are commonly known, which is the Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500. In fact, they have one little category here called, the first category is domestic indexes, which it looks like there's about 30 or 40 on this page.
Wow.
Then it goes to other domestic stock indexes, and it's all the ones we know of: Dow Jones Industrial, the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange Composite, Russell 2000, S&P 500, and the S&P Midcap 400. So the
They
reason
don't have my Chechen 5 in there.
no, doesn't it? Well, it might be the Chechen. No, they said that's a dance. Anyway, there are so many; it's just hard to imagine.
That's amazing.
But you led me into a subject, and I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you said the word index annuity. Do you know what that is?
I just watch the television and see these spots popping up all the time.
Do you know what that is?
I have no clue.
Well,
what
thank
it
you.
is.
I knew I could get a straight answer out of you eventually. You ever work on radio where you have a
No.
hard time giving a
I'm a
straight answer?
television guy. I don't know what this is.
What happens is annuity is, and let me tell you first of all, my compliance people say whenever I talk about these, you're supposed to know the claims paying ability of the insurance company. So let's just talk about the word annuity. Why do we have such a thing, and what is it? Well, it's a contract with an insurance company. That's all there is to it. Why do we have it? Well, number one, if we put money into it, it can be tax deferred, meaning until we take money out, there's no taxes. When we take money out, it's ordinary income taxes under almost all circumstances, no other form. Number three, when we die, it's not subject to probate, which means whoever's written down in the contract, they'll get the money. It doesn't all they have to do is show a death certificate.
Do you have to put that in your trust?
No. In fact, I always suggest do not do that because it adds an extra element.
Okay.
Because it's named beneficiaries, you have to show a death certificate, and that's it. You're the named beneficiary, show the death certificate, they give you the money. Last and not least, if you get sued, they cannot take an annuity away from you. So it's not subject to attachment by creditors. So that's the reason you have one. Now, there's 3 or 4 different kinds. The one that most of us grew up understanding is what I call an immediate, not what I call, it's what they call an immediate. I call it a pension. You retire, and the company director says, okay, fine, here you go. We're going to give you a check every month for the rest of your life, $1,000 a month. And you say, well, what happens if I die after the first month? He said, nobody gets anything. Well, I don't like that. Okay, well, fine, then we can give you $800 a month, and then when you die, your wife keeps getting $800 a month. Well, what happens when she dies? Nobody gets anything. Well, wait a minute. Are there other choices? Well, there's usually 8 or 10, but not all companies offer all of the choices. Sometimes they say, we'll give you a check every month for the rest of your life, but no less than 10 years. So let's say you live 9 years. Somebody keeps getting that check for the 10th year. Sometimes it's 15 years. You can put wrinkles into this, quote, pension to protect your heirs, your beneficiaries, not just yourself. I had an old lady that I took care of for 10 years that did not like her family, didn't like anybody. And basically I said, you can get a check for $2,000 a month, but if we add somebody else to it in case you die, they keep getting a check too. And she said, I don't want anybody getting a dime. Well, she got the highest check.
Nice person.
Well, not really. But what happened is the concept was she got the highest check. But the key was if she'd have died after 1 month or 1 year, that money was gone. But she beat the system because she lived like another 11 years. So she beat the insurance company. They lost on her. But that's okay. It's, listen, no such thing as an insurance company losing money. They have all kinds of systems they plug into the computer to spit out what's going to happen. So that's what's called an immediate or a pension. So the question is, is that good, bad, or indifferent? Well, here comes some wrinkles. One of the things, or some of the things they plug into the computer, one is, how old are you? What's your sex? I shouldn't say, do you get any? No, just what are you? So if you're male or female.
I was going to say before or after marriage.
Before, right. And then the third question is, or the third one is, the then current interest rate, or whatever they're contracted for. So the then current interest rate can make a big difference because interest rates are extremely low right now. So when people talk to me about doing this, quote, pension, I said, I might want to wait a year or two to see if interest rates go up some. Back when interest rates were 7, 8, 9, or 10%, boy, these things were stellar because the amount of the check you would get every month when they plug in these different variables was wonderful. A lot of these, quote, contracts, the annuity contract says they will plug in a 1% interest rate if you, quote, annuitize, which means set up a pension. Now, 1% is nothing. Sometimes they can give more, but that might be the floor. 340-1590, 340-1590, and we got a caller. Let me find my earphones and put them on. And Jerry, it's Joe MARTEK. You're on the radio.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
And good morning to your partner there.
Hey, that's Alan Love, retired
good morning,
prosec-
Alan.
There you go.
I was wondering, back in the 90s, in fact, 9/5/95, September 5th, 1995, I got into a variable annuity.
Right.
And it was 7 years from maturity, and I never added a cent to it. And it tripled, and it was a variable annuity. And what I was wondering is number one, did index annuities come out later, number one? And number two, is a fixed annuity a better deal than a variable annuity? And I'd like to listen off air if that'd be okay.
No, yeah, but let me ask you one more thing. You said you had a variable that tripled?
Yeah, it tripled. I didn't add a cent to it, and it tripled in the maturity, the time it took to mature.
In 7 years?
Yeah, and because of 9/11, 9/11, I was lucky to get out of there with my initial investment.
Nice.
And that was just because of 9/11.
Sure. Okay,
And,
listen.
I would like to listen off air. If that'd be okay, Joe?
Absolutely, Jerry. Thank you for the question, though. That's a good one. You go ahead and listen. Here we go. So we're going to talk about, he brought up three different subjects: a fixed annuity, an index annuity, and a variable annuity, right?
Right.
Okay. So let's just talk about the variable first, and I'm going to talk about it last also, just to refresh you. A variable says you're in the market. In the market. Now, Alan Love, I brought you something today that showed every stock market index that I've ever heard of and some that I haven't heard of. And on the second page, I think, on the top, are the 5 best-known stock market indexes. Is that the second page on top? Did I mark them?
Yes, you did.
Which is the S&P 500.
Dow Jones Industrial Average, NASDAQ Composite, New York Stock Exchange Composite, Russell 2000, and S&P, the commodity index of the S&P.
Okay, so here's what happens. Let's just say that variable annuity that he had, he said it tripled. What happened was he was in what looks like, they don't call them mutual funds, but they look and smell just like them, but they put a different name to them. And he could have been in something like the S&P 500. He could have been in the Dow index. He could have been into large cap funds. He could have been in small cap funds. These are all names that used in the mutual fund business, but when they're in an annuity contract, they changed the word from mutual fund to just fund. Okay? So they're in. Now, it's like being Catholic again. Don't ask questions, you just are one. We have to have words, and they don't need to rhyme or make sense. It's just the rules. So what happened is, when you're in a variable annuity, you are allowed to be invested in the market in what looks like, smells like, is like mutual funds managed by the same companies that you've heard, like Fidelity and Federated and all the rest of the big companies. And when the market's going up, you're going up like crazy. And like he said, he tripled his money in a 7-year period. Now, that's what you call good. Now, does everybody do that? No. But the key was he was in the market. Now, why was he in a variable annuity? Because what the insurance company says is, okay, fine, we'll let you be in the market on one side, but if something goes wrong, we will put insurance on the investment to protect your family in case you die on the wrong day. Now, I joke about this, but let's say you put $100,000 into this variable annuity, and the first year or two it goes up to, say, 150. But then all of a sudden the market collapses, 87 hits again, and it goes down to 50,000. But some of these companies have a death benefit that guarantees an annual step up, or 5% a year, or a quarterly step up. So easily, if he'd have died when the market was down to 50, there might have been a death benefit in there that would have protected it up to $200,000 or $300,000. So they take the high watermark and they lock it in. Okay, so there's where the insurance comes.
You could be serious when you say dying on the wrong day.
Well, you know, I used to joke about that, but I said your kids would be much happier if you die when the market's up than when it's down. Maserati costs money. So the key thing is this. The insurance company says, hey, you want to protect your wife, your spouse, in case you die on the wrong day, that we lock in these death benefits to protect your family. Then you might say, well, what happens if I don't die? I don't care about protecting my kids or my spouse or whatever. Say, well, a lot of the insurance companies say, here's what we'll do. From the day one, what you put in, we, depending on your age, will guarantee you an income for the rest of your life of 5% per year on whatever you put in. So let's say you put in $100,000. 5% is $5,000 a year, divided by 12 is $480 or some odd dollars, $450, something like that a month, for the rest of your life. However, a lot of them say, okay, once a year, if the market goes up, we'll step it up. So let's just say, like in Jerry's position, the thing went up triple. So he put in 100, now it's 300. And they might say, okay, fine, that's your anniversary value. So what we'll do is we'll guarantee you an income on that 300 for the rest of your life. Well, what happens if the market collapses and goes down to 100 again or whatever? Nope, you stay at that high watermark. So, Jerry, what happens with the variable annuity, you won, you did exactly what's supposed to happen, but the insurance company you were with probably had something I'm talking about to protect your family in case you died on the wrong day, or to protect you in case you decided to live to become really, really old. So now, next subject, which is called an index annuity. Now, people often, and I mean regularly, confuse the variable with the index, because inside
That's
the
just like playing stocks, right?
well, it's very well, inside the variable you can be invested in an index, like the S&P 500. So the index annuity says we are a fixed index annuity. What's that mean? It means we're going to pay you interest. It also means you are not in the market. We are going to pay you interest based on an index. Now, wait a minute. It gets more confusing. Based on the performance of the index. Okay, well, how do we calculate that? Oh, well, what we might do is average every single day of the year together and pay you the average of whatever that is. Now, do you ever add up 1 through 10 and divide by 10? You end up with 5. Well, when you average something, there's always a story. Well, it kind of makes it smoother. Well, guess what? You're not smooth if the market was way up at the end and they averaged all the way through. Some of them, to make it worse, come up and say, fine, we're going to pay you interest based on that index, and we'll actually pay you point to point. Whatever it goes from today till 1 year from now, we'll pay you that. Oh, but I forgot to tell you, we have a cap. And our cap is 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever it might be. Means if it earns 20 and you have a cap of 3, you ain't going to earn more than 3. Now, why would we have such a thing? Well, first of all, I don't like these things, period. Most broker-dealers don't like them either. And in fact, if I had to write one, they have to be on an approved list. It has to go through compliance. It has to go through my broker-dealer. You have to sign a piece of paper that says you're dumb as a stump and you're willing to buy it anyway, that I didn't talk you into it.
What's an approved list?
Well, they give me a list of the companies that we can do these index annuities.
I got you.
And not all their products either. They'll say exactly which ones, which they think are probably the least onerous, the least offensive, the least less possibility of misrepresentation, so that people understand what they're getting. But here comes the problem. When you look at the word fixed, not variable, fixed index, fixed annuity, the government says if you're going to be in that kind of instrument, the majority of your investments have to be based in the bond market. Now, what are bonds paying, Alan?
Probably around 2.5% per year now.
Okay.
On the 10-year.
So let's just say they're paying 3 or 4, either way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they still have to make a profit, so the insurance company is going to take out a piece of the cut. So no matter what happens is, if you were in this, quote, fixed index annuity, and they're going to pay you interest based on the performance of an index, believe me, they're going to have a cap or a way of not paying the entire thing. But on the other hand, they will guarantee you a downside that it can never go down because it's fixed. So you're going to get a fixed interest rate no less than 1% or whatever the number is in the contract. The key things you have to be extremely careful of, is understanding the word cap, C-A-P. If there is a cap in your contract, you want to read that very carefully, have them pointed out, and what you might even want to do is after you talk to the agent, is you call the company directly, get a person on the phone that is not a commissioned agent and say, explain the cap to me. How does the cap work? Some companies allow changing the cap every year. Now that's exciting. So we start off, let's say, the first year with a 4% cap. Well, it can go down to 3 or 2. I mean, you've got to be extremely careful with
But how long is your contract? 7 years, probably.
Well, the average variable annuity is, say, 7 years long or 5 or 10 somewhere. But some of these index annuities go up to 15 and 20. Some also have penalties that are in the 12 to 20% range per year for a long period of time. Now, why do they have that? Well, because what happens, some of these products, they'll pay you, quote, a big bonus the first year, 6, 8, 10%. Well, if they're going to put that bonus into your contract, they normally then have a monster surrender penalty for a long period of time in order to collect it. Another thing you have to be very careful of on the index annuity, and I'm not saying all companies do this, you just have to ask these questions, is can you take money out? And when you take money out, has it accrued any interest? Very often, you take money out, you're taking your own money, so they don't pay interest on that money. Now that's exciting. So very often the words, and you said it just a minute ago, that on commercials on TV you hear words, but very often it'll say that they were credited interest, not paid. You don't understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I had another guy, they told me I'm going to make 7%. And I said, really? Show me where it says 7%. And he says, right here, look, it says 7% factor. And I said, where did you get interest from the word factor? He goes, what is that? And I said, look, what they do is based on your age, they're going to give you $100,000. They're going to give you a 7% factor until the money's gone. So basically, they're going to pay me my own money, pretty much. Boy, isn't that exciting? But sometimes they will accrue some interest in there. Some. How do they calculate that?
People still fall for this.
You've got to be really careful. Now, again, you know, the word in the business is omissions, errors, where you weren't lied to, but you may not have been told the whole story. Have you heard that, Alan, be happening?
Yes, I have indeed.
So I am extremely reticent to endorse or even like any one of these products. They may work. One of the things that they do that is what they, I think, were designed to do was for you to set up a pension at some point and annuitize, quote, meaning get a check every month for the rest of your life after a certain period of time. That could be a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the contract says. Back again. Ask that question. You realize how many questions I brought up during this thing that you forgot every one of them already? And that's what happens. There's 10 or 15 questions you're supposed to ask, and as soon as somebody mentions the third question, you forgot the first two. It's too many questions. That's like giving out 2 separate phone numbers for the same place. Well, as soon as you give the second one, they forgot the first one, and they probably forgot the second one because they got confused. So the object I'm trying to tell you, folks, is this. Just like Jerry was saying, if you have a question about an index annuity, call me. 340-1590. Either on the air we can talk about it, or what I normally do, let's just say that I come to visit you or you come to visit me, and you say, Joe, I've got this index annuity. It really sounds good. What do you think? And I'll say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call the company right now and put them on a speakerphone. And I'm going to ask the questions, and you're going to give them authority to talk to me. And when we're all done, you're going to throw up. Because what you think you have, you don't have. I had one fellow I went to see listening to WCNO, and he was a Teamsters official, and he thought he was going to haul out the big Teamsters attorneys and kill the insurance company because the Teamsters like to kill people, you know. So, and I said, I don't think you got a chance because it's 3 years old. Anyway, he was madder than a wet hen because what he thought he had, he was lied to. I mean, let's put it this way. He may not have been lied to, but he wasn't told the whole story. And a guy named Alan Love, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin 3 years ago, said, what about these great index annuities, Joe?
Yes, you bring that up quite often, but I was re-educated. But Joe, you know, most of your show is tremendous information, but we do get into minutia once in a while.
Minutia.
And when we get into
let me write that.
and when we get into minutia, sometimes errors occur, and I would like to correct an error that went over the air.
Go ahead.
If you add 1 through 10 and you divide by 10, you don't get 5, you get 5.5.
Thank you so much.
He went to a Jesuit school. It's close.
You know, no. He used to.
But you'd round up then.
He used to teach in a synagogue.
Right.
The breaststroke. Right. Did you know this?
No. See, that's the difference between a Jesuit school and a Hebrew school. The Jesuit school, would round down to 5. The Hebrew school would round up to 6.
Well, it depends. Who's paying, right? Hey, listen, when a Gentile comes in, we definitely charge him the same as we do the Jew, just a little extra. Anyway.
I'm glad this is our final broadcast.
Final broadcast. Well, you see, Alan is a card. I'm telling you what, he could teach Hebrew school. He could teach rabbis how to look like a rabbi. But was it 5 or 7 or 10 years ago you converted to Christianity?
July 18th, 2009. So it's almost 10 years.
Almost. Okay. Well, the reason I pick on him is because he's here.
You're close enough. I'll round up. Let's try and get this show upscale a little bit with the help of our listeners. 340-1590. Please give us a call on anything. You've got other team members besides investments, Joe. Real estate.
I've got one more subject that Jerry wanted to know.
Fine.
And you already fell asleep on me. You forgot. He had one more subject, which is just a pure fixed annuity.
Ah, yes.
He was bothered by that 5.5.
He was very young. He was laying there with that 5.5. You know, just.
No, I was sitting in a chair. I'm on TV today. People can
You're
see that.
on TV today. Oh no, but it's time delayed till tomorrow. So anyway, what happens is a pure fixed annuity, pure fixed, pays an interest rate. I mean, what can it do? Let's just say there's 2 different kinds of fixed. One says we're going to pay you, let's just say 3% for the next 5 years, or 6 years, or 7 years, whatever the time frame is, and it's not going to change one bit. That's the most common fixed annuity. Number 2, sometimes they'll say, okay, fine, we'll pay you 5% the first year, and then we'll pay you 3% for the next 4 years. And that happens. Then there's a third one that says it's a fixed annuity, and we're going to pay you 5% this year, and we'll never pay you less than 2 or 3, but the interest rate can change every year, because back again to the bond market. If they buy all their bonds today, they're solid numbers for the next 5 years because they've got solid figures. But if they buy variables that they buy and sell each year, the bond market can go change, and so can the interest rate.
Got a question, Joe. Remember back around 1980 when interest rates were around 18%?
Boy, do I.
If you bought a fixed annuity at that point, were you locking in 18% a year?
Yeah, but it probably wasn't 18, but it was high. Because interest rates 18 were mortgage rates, I think. But the banks were paying, well, I had a client of mine that was moved, I forget which state. She inherited some money. She went into the bank and said, I want the longest CD you've got. And they said, well, it pays 12%, but really I can get you 15 or 16 today on a shorter term. She goes, nope, I want the longest term you got. So they gave her like an 8 or 10 year at 12%. Now, she won big time.
Yeah, I was going to
Did
say.
she won.
Yeah.
The rule of 72, that money doubled every 6 years.
That's right. Rule of 72, folks, just so you know, if you divide the interest rate into 72, so 12 goes into 72 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that means if you had a 12% instrument,
Are
you
you
would
sure
double
about
your
that
money
number?
every 6 years.
You're sure about that number?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
That's the rule of 72. They teach this in Jesuit college. Remember that where you went, you slept through?
I slept through that class.
So
I
if she got a jumbo CD for $100,000 for that 10 years, she probably had $250,000
Yeah.
when that CD
Monster.
matured.
Yeah, and the bank did not go out of business, but even if it had, if it was FDIC, even though it only protected 100,000, give or take at that time, even if other banks took it over, they had to honor that agreement. And normally when the government gets involved, they make other banks take them over and honor whatever instruments they have. Anyway, the concept I'm trying to talk to you about with Jerry, I love the concept of the variable because inside of the variable you have different investment options, including cash, including small instruments, including bonds. You got all kinds of different places. So right now, what's the S&P 500 for the last 5 years has averaged what? I've got an actual
The
print.
S&P 500 for the last 5 years has averaged 6.8%.
No, you're wrong.
I'm sorry, read the wrong column. 13.7%.
See, he got it. First of all, he's a little slow on reading, but he's got these columns. So what happened is, if you'd have been
But was he reading from right to left or left to right?
Yeah, he's reading from top to bottom.
That's what I was doing.
Anyway, the S&P 500 basically since 1930 has averaged roughly 10% a year.
Right.
Now, it has years that's gone up 20 and 25 and years that's gone down 20 and 25. So dying on the wrong day is not good. Because your family, if we were down 20 or 25%, you just whopped off all the profit you made the year before, maybe for the last 3 years. In fact, was it not last year, but the year before, the S&P 500 was up pretty close to 20%. Am I right, Alan?
About 19 and change.
Yep. See, I got it. Alan, he's the mathematician here. So last year, what was it 1 year on the S&P 500 on that thing? He's looking at
I'm
the chart.
looking at the 1 year column to make sure I've got the right column. That was the 6.8%.
Okay. So anyway,
Boy, I'll take that.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's nothing wrong with these numbers, but the key thing I'm trying to say is any 1 year can be up higher than another. People that quote market timers, they do real well when the market's going up. But there's not a whole bunch. And I was telling these couple this morning, I said, whenever you get these guys on TV touting all of this and how you can flip houses and make this, these are guys that can't do it for a living, so they teach it. And they get people to give them $400 or $500 to teach them the course, and they get 50,000 people giving them $500. Guess what? They just made more than if anybody was flipping houses. So the key thing that happens is the object of Jerry with the annuity contract, it would protect his gains, live or die, under most of these companies if they have these features invested in that contract. And the variable annuity allows you to move investments inside of it, out of this, into that. Sometimes they allow you to do it once a month, sometimes more often. But the bottom line is that allows a whole lot of flexibility. 340-1590, 340-1590. And we have our faithful, dedicated listener, and it's not Bulldog, it's Mike. Hey, Mike, you're on the radio.
Thank you. I wanted to see if I could bring back a memory to anyone down there. When I was little, my folks would occasionally get my brothers and me a savings bond.
Yeah.
What was that about?
You know, the government, and, you know, go back to was it the Second World War or First World War? They had war bonds.
War bonds. Oh, yeah.
What they did were trying to raise money for the war effort, so people were saving money, and they paid an interest rate. And those things stayed around forever, and they may still be available. I don't know. I know. Only time I hear is people saying they want to cash them in. What do I do?
There'll be Trump war bonds now.
And that's exciting.
I wondered about that. And also, I wanted to ask if you all ever had the pleasure I used to get with my first paycheck with a new job, especially early on. I worked pumping gas at Kings Highway and Orange Avenue at an Amoco station, and I'll never forget the pleasure of being handed a check. Wasn't just, you know, cash for mowing my folks' yard or something like that. This was an actual check, money I didn't have the week before. Did you all experience that pleasure, that sensation? It's like nothing else.
You know, it's kind of interesting how you say that, because my dad was a milkman in Detroit, and the only reason I was born so I could help him deliver milk. So I used to get paid in cash, you know, and I got to tell you, we were Catholic, so I could have holy days where I didn't have to go to school, so I could work on that truck. And if he could have been Jewish and Catholic, I'd have had more days off of school so I could work on that truck. But I had one of my first jobs, not working for my dad, pumping gas too. And I do remember, and I'm older than you, Mike, but you'll love this. I got $1 an hour minus shortages. So, you know, back then you didn't have calculators and stuff. You had to make change. So, and then you had to balance every shift, every quart of oil in a place, every drop of gas, the whole thing. And if you were short, some weeks I made 50 cents an hour.
And you'd come out and put oil in people's engine,
pump their
wipe
gas,
their
wipe the windshield, the whole bit. Yeah,
yes.
Big time, big time.
That was me.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, you know, it was not a bad experience. In fact, my vivid memories of it were one time this woman ran into the restroom and locked herself in, and some guy tried to, I think they had a fight, and I think she won because he finally left.
Well, in Fort Pierce, you were always able to find work because of our packing houses.
Yeah.
So I did some of that, too, before I got electronic skills. Now, a quick shout-out to a company that I believe advertises through the station. A man working next door, I recognized him as an air conditioner worker, and I told him a few days ago, I said, "Are you AC?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I have money. Please come help me. Check my system if you would." And he did. Man from Nice Air.
There you go.
And in 15 minutes, he found a wire in the back that had been cut by the yard people.
Oh.
So I have air conditioning.
Lucky. Hey, listen, Florida without AC, Jerry, is a sin.
They're good folks.
That was a great thing, though. That man saved me, 'cause this was going to be a tough summer, and I wasn't going to do anything about it.
Hey, Mike, listen, you won. That's good. It's nice to know there's honorable people in this world, you know.
It
'cause
was great.
Yeah. Hey, Miguel, we really appreciate you calling in, my man. Thanks for listening.
Okay, bye now.
340-1590, 340-1590. Yeah, I don't know how many first jobs or jobs that were like you know, and you get this big thing politically today about inequality in jobs, but, you know, every kid in the world, including me, wanted to start at the top and work down. But you're not allowed to do that. You had to start at the bottom and work your way up, called entry-level jobs.
Okay, let's talk to Alan here and see what his opinion is
Of?
On the Democratic plan for the equal pay.
In your opinion of equal pay?
I believe if a person, no matter what their sex, is doing the same job as another person and doing it well and competently, they should receive the same amount of pay.
What about wealth redistribution?
Obviously, that's socialism, and we don't particularly care for that kind of economic policy unless you're changing, Joe.
Definitely not in this room. That's for
Okay,
sure.
good.
That's it. Now, what happens is it's kind of an interesting phenomenon right now that some of the people making the most noise in the Democratic Party, Bernie and Ocasio, are wealth redistribution people, which coincidentally, communism, socialism, it seems to me there have been no countries that have pulled this off successfully. Now, we have one that might say they're somewhat successful, and that's Norway. But they're loaded with oil, so that subsidizes the socialism. But it's also the most expensive country on earth to live in. Little minor things.
Yeah, but one, if I can digress back to your discussion of annuities for a moment, Joe, when the market goes up, and it goes up significantly, like 20% in a year, you may not get all that 20% because there are fees and other things that you can put on those variable annuities, like life insurance and things like that to protect your family. That would lower the return. Am I correct on that?
Well, there's no such thing as an insurance company working for free. So what people usually don't see are the fees that are charged. Now, most companies I deal with today send statements out to people and actually show them the fees that they're actually that they're paying. Now, unfortunately,
but you have to read those.
Well, that's the problem. You just hit it. You have to read. Jesuits were never taught how to read, so that's not a big deal. But you learn how to talk on the radio, but reading was, that's not a good thing. But the key thing is that insurance companies are going to charge a fee. So I always tell people, look, at insurance, and what Alan was just saying, let's say the S&P 500 went up 20% for the year. Well, what happens is, if I'm not mistaken, Alan, and you stay with me, when we see the S&P 500 in the newspaper every day, that is the index value based on all of the shares of stock inside of it, weighted based on the size of the company.
Correct.
Okay. What it does not include are the dividends.
Correct.
Okay, so what happens is, let's say the index goes up 20% for the year. Okay, let's just use that number. The dividends might have added another 2 or 3%.
Correct.
But they don't show that.
That's correct.
So now, very often, these variable annuities, if the index went up 20%, they may have actually gone up 20% also, because you were actually invested in all of those stocks, which were paying a dividend, which were part of the money that came into the account, but was not always shown as far as the index value. Now, let me tell you, folks, this gets confusing, but the reality is this. What Alan was alluding to, if you could invest in 500 companies of America, and you had no broker, and you had no mutual fund company, and you had no insurance company, and the index went up 20% for the year, you'd probably be up 23% for the year, because you wouldn't have to pay anybody. But almost nobody can do that. You are invested in the annuity contract or with a mutual fund company or an index company of some kind, and literally there are some fees that are going to be paid. Speaking of Ms. Victoria Lloyd, who's not been here for a couple weeks, who's hiding, she's on the radio.
No, I'm not. I'm far from hiding. I'm in my car. We're out looking at property. So
It's
I wanted to call in real quick.
Well, that's the same thing. You're working.
I know. I'm always working. That's my problem. We got to get you lazy guys out and go to work.
Well, you see, Alan and I, we decided that we'd rather have you working than us.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet.
You're not.
Well, we've had some experiences with 55 and older communities that I want to share with a couple of people. And, I had talked to a real estate attorney because we think it's somewhat of a form of discrimination, because you have to have at least a 700 credit score. They won't even allow you into this one particular community. We won't mention any names, but, it's kind of sad that people judge you by a credit score like that.
And I wonder if the documents allow that, Vic. I think here comes an attorney, right?
Whoa.
I have, you and I have read hundreds of documents over the years, and I don't remember ever saying that the association could use or could not use. I've never heard a reference, period, to credit score. Have you?
No, and the thing of it is, when I did talk to the real estate attorney, it is a gray area, but then you've got to have a lawsuit. You got to take them under legal action, and a lot of people just don't do it.
Nope.
The other thing that we're running into is, as you know, Joe, we built out big developments. And matter of fact, I've shown the fountains, and we were going to look at Indian Pines, which were a couple we built. But on the other hand, they're saying they're not using that 80-20 rule for 55 and older.
What's the 80-20? What's the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, remember when they changed? Hold on.
You got to cough a little first. She's going to cough.
No, I'm sorry. I swallowed.
You're allowed. Hey, this is one of the perks of getting old, Vic. You do this. You forget how to.
I got a tickle in my throat.
Okay. Anyway.
But anyway, the 80-20 rule, which the state came up with when they went with the 55 and older.
Right.
So they're saying that they could have 20% under 55 if they wanted it.
If they wanted. But however, like you said, the documents, we used to write them, and I will tell you this. You and I both know that some of these things can be god-awful. And then the second thing is these new board of directors, sometimes they change the rules and these things. It's a constant hassle, and I feel bad, except when you get a good community where things are just floating along nice and smooth.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad, Joe. Let me tell you, especially with the credit. It seems like that is such a form of discrimination.
Terrible.
If anybody's ever heard of it or had any problems,
one person
I'd like them to call in.
could have had a big medical judgment, and it can affect their credit score like crazy, and they could be wonderful, and everything is fine, but they have that $80,000, $100,000 medical bill hanging on them. Anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
I'm going to tell you a little story. I guess somebody made an application, not us, but somebody did, and they had a 700 score, but when they pulled the credit report, as you know, your score goes down. It went down 2 points, and they denied them.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, that's how strict they are, and I just don't think that's legal.
Point like you say, it would take an attorney filing a suit or something. But anyway, I think we're running out of time, Vic. We've got music playing in the background. Good talking to you. I'm glad you called in. A little education there, and it's one of the things that people should ask a realtor right away, especially somebody like you. You'll guide them in the right direction.
I never heard that before.
Thanks, Vic. Bye. Hey, until next week, are we leaving? Should we say goodbye now? Hey, goodbye now.
Goodbye now.
You've been listening to the Team MARTEK Hour. The Team MARTEK Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team MARTEK Hour here on WPSL 1590.
Is CBS News.